are people going to go watch a movie called The Shift that's made by Angel Studios? Is the name Angel Studios actually heard it? Are we wearing our heart on our sleeve a little bit here? Are we showing our hand a little too much? Are we alienating an audience based off of what we clearly are espousing as our beliefs?
I see what you're saying. I think Angel Studios is better than PureFlix.
Oh, 100%. I don't know what marketing team was behind PureFlix.
What do you guys think we should name our new studio? It's got good pure movies, and it's movies. PureFlix. It's like Netflix, but it's pure.
Guys, too many people have been Netflix and chilling. We need to bring back purity. Chastity, guys. PureFlix.
PureFlix and room for Jesus.
Yeah, amen. I can't fit a Bible in between you two.
Hello there.
Don't have a good day. Have a great day.
Talk to me, Goose.
I'm gonna steal the Declaration of Independence.
Why so serious?
World! I could do this all day.
Are you watching closely?
Welcome, everybody, to the One-Eyed Film Podcast. I'm your host, Seth Mossberg, and today we got Deacon joining us after a long hiatus of, for some reason, not being on. Just topics that we've talked about.
Didn't like me anymore.
No, that's not it.
My opinions are too based.
That's true, but that's not the reason. And then Zach, pretty much the second host by now, because he's got so much free time on his hands. We love post-college. And then Deacon, who's like, I can only do it at 9 p.m. on a Saturday night because I'm in college and have sports. And just kidding. We love you, Deacon.
Busy life.
I get it. I wouldn't have been able to do this in college, but I appreciate you guys being here. We got an interesting topic. But before we get to that, merch. We launched merch last week. Go buy some and support the podcast. It's really cool. Again, I tried to make it as cheap as possible so that it didn't have to be anything for my profit. I'm basically getting none of the money. You're just paying shipping and production. So there's that. It's a pretty good deal. So go get some of that. We are talking about Christian movies today, which could get a little spicy because some people really like their God's Not Dead and really like their PureFlix movies and stuff like that. But we're here to just freaking dunk on them. No, we're going to analyze them a little bit and figure out what's good, what's bad, what do we need to more of, what do we need to get rid of. So yeah, that's what I got to start us off. What do you guys think the current situation with Christian filmmaking is in our current day and age, with whether it's PureFlix, Kendrick Brothers, movies that aren't even meant to be Christian? Like, what would you say the consensus of Christians right now is with movies that are made with a message that somehow ties into the Bible?
Well, most of the movies that I watch aren't Christian because most of the Christian movies aren't actually that good. And I think the main reason for that is kind of why we see a lot of like just normal secular movies failing today. And I think that's because they're letting the message drive the story instead of the story drive the message, if that makes any sense. And then you end up with kind of more like propaganda than an actual like good movie. Like, with like the Marvels just came out and the whole big thing is just like, oh, they're a female superhero team up, and that's kind of as far as the story goes. And I think we just kind of have, in many Christian movies, it's just kind of the same, oh, Jesus loves you and everything, but there's not really much of an actual good story there. It's just kind of a weak story to get the message by.
Yeah, I would agree overall with that. I do really like what you said, and if you hadn't said it, I was going to bring up the fact that I think what Christian movies struggle a lot with these days is the same thing that woke movies struggle with, which is Christians and conservatives all the time complain about how they don't want to go to the movies and have an agenda shoved down their throat and all that. And I 100% agree. I'm with them on that 100%. But in the same fashion, a lot of conservative or Christian movies will shove their political agenda down their throat. Now, they have their own perspectives, and I have my perspective about whether some issues are quote-unquote political or whether or not they're social truths that they're just trying to implement in their movies. There's a little bit of a gray area there. But in the same way, we don't like certain things being preached. There's a lot of Christian movies that are just there to preach a certain message and get that message across. And I think as a general rule to the audience, that's unappealing. Even to like us, we like the message generally. We're Christians. We believe in that message, but we struggle to watch movies that are still shoving that message down your throat, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. There's multiple different examples to go off of to explain what we're trying to say here. I think everyone's favorite, it's either your favorite movie or it's your favorite to hate on, is God's Not Dead, and that, what is it, 4 movies now? Or a trilogy and a
5,
spinoff?
I believe.
Oh, and 5? I didn't know about the 5th one.
God only died once. I
God,
don't know why it needed to happen 5 times.
do you get it, guys? God's not dead for the 5th time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really taking something that's iconic in Christian music, which was God's Not Dead from the Newsboys. It's funny how popular that is when it's really a weird song. But yeah, the movies want to convey the truth of Jesus. Nothing in it is wrong. That's not our problem, is that they're not incorrect movies in the sense of theology for the most part. Even God's Not Dead 2. I'm going to be honest. I've watched God's Not Dead 1 and God's Not Dead 2. I never saw God's Not Dead Into the Light or Out of the Darkness or whatever it is. And then the rest of them, I didn't even know it came out. The God's Not Dead 2 was very apologetic focused, which I love. I love apologetics. But they really shoehorned all of the information that is apologetics into a story that doesn't make sense. The fact that they got J. Warner Wallace and Lee Strobel to testify on the witness stand for the case of a teacher saying that she'll pray for the student or something like that, that's absurd. I don't know that it was meant to be absurd. They play themselves, so it's not like they're just people who are making a defense for the gospel. They're playing themselves. It's so whack to think about that that's actually what they wanted for the story.
It's an alternative history.
And then the whole God's Not Dead 1 with the professor being so controlling over his students. They said that at the end of the movie, these are all the cases that are just like what happened in the movie where Christians were forced to do something against their will in a classroom. And those cases have value to a conversation like that, but the way they portrayed it in the movie is just inaccurate. I don't want to say nothing's impossible with God, but the way the professor comes to Christ at the very end is a little out there, that he just suddenly has a turn of heart. It's possible that he was fearful of death in that moment and it hadn't hit him until then. Literally, the car hadn't hit him until then.
Spoilers.
Spoiler alert. But then, then the pastor gets down on one knee and explains the gospel pretty much. I think of another movie that I haven't seen in forever, but my dad wanted us to watch it. I don't remember why, but it's called Christmas Grace. And it was one of those really bad Christian movies. It's about 2 opposing toy stores at Christmas who are rivals, and the one is a Christian and the other is like a nasty business owner who wants anything to take over the other. And the guy's just like, Jesus loves you and you don't have to be like this. And he's like, got me there.
Checkmate, atheist.
It has the gospel truth in it, yes, but it doesn't make sense in the story. And so then we get into like the Kendrick brothers. They've made Courageous and Fireproof, War Room, and a couple others recently, but they're decent movies. They have good production, good story. They still can kind of shoehorn in the gospel sometimes and a lot more teaching than is usually there in a movie, but it's a little bit more fluid, and I appreciate those movies. The ones that I think we're really interested in are the ones that tell either a Christian story without the gospel or a story with a hint of the gospel. The ones that are a Christian story without the gospel are ones like I Can Only Imagine or I Still Believe, that are pretty much biopics of Christian artists who made music and their story, which I think is great. Bart Millard and Jeremy Camp are the characters of those movies. I really enjoyed those. I also love the music and it sounds really good. But then the movies that don't follow a Christian story but have a hint of the message, a hint of the gospel. Did I freeze?
Oh, he's gone.
Well, it looks like we're hosting the One-Eyed Film Podcast by yourself. I'm Deacon. This is Zach. He's taking over for Seth for the time being.
Yeah.
Seth may return. He might have been caught up in the rapture. If he was, I have a few concerns for myself about leading a Christian podcast, but oh well.
Well, seems like a good time to... Oh, he's back.
I'm back. Okay, so the Christian movies that we like, the ones that are just a good story with a hint of the gospel. Some examples of those that I think we're really interested in, and we have liked, at least we've talked about them already. We've talked about Sound of Freedom, Jesus Revolution. We wanted to talk about Nefarious, and we will a little bit today. But those movies are not in-your-face gospel. They are stories, and yes, I guess Sound of Freedom and Jesus Revolution kind of fall under the Christian stories that don't necessarily have the gospel in them because they're talking about events that actually happened. But they're examples of how to make a movie that's not labeled as Christian, maybe religious. It has religious themes in it, and it has theology that we would say is good and beneficial, but it still could be watched by almost anyone in the sense that no one's going to be turned away at this movie because it has a more clear story.
Yes, those movies aren't bad, and I think they're useful in their own right. Movies that are almost more powerful to me as far as gospel Christian telling things are movies that actually aren't even Christian, right? Because Nefarious, you squint at it, whatever. It clearly had a Christian bent to it. Like, there's no way around that. But I think of movies as almost more spiritually powerful to me as a movie, Hacksaw Ridge.
I was going to bring that up.
Hacksaw Ridge wasn't a Christian movie, but rather, at least to my knowledge, it wasn't a Christian director or anything. But what Hacksaw Ridge does, and what I think is powerful to us even outside of the realm of media, right, is this idea that our most powerful tool as Christians isn't necessarily apologetics. Most atheists won't be converted because of science or whatever apologetic. That's not the reason generally they're atheists. Generally there's a different issue. That's a different conversation. But what ultimately as Christians one of our most useful tools is our testimony. The testimony of what God has done in our lives and how he's worked through us. And so in the realm of storytelling, movies as a media are very good for conveying a testimony or conveying a story of what God has done. And often that won't be a preacher getting down on his knee by the side of a dying man and being like, oh yeah, this is the gospel. And the guy is like, oh, I was so dumb before, but now I'm enlightened, right? That's an exposition dump, right? Honestly, movies like God's Not Dead, when you have like a mild confrontation or something and then your friend like comes to back you up and they yell something stupid and you're like, oh my goodness, shut up. That's, for me, that's what God's Not Dead 1 through 5 is. Like, I get sick of atheists or whatever, like, making this stuff like, oh, Christians are cringe and all that stuff. And then our response to that is to keep pumping out the same movie. And I'm like, guys, you're just adding fuel to the fire. What are you doing? Like, you just gave all these guys another video expose about how Christians can't make films and how they have nothing to say and all this stuff. Like, it's just bad. It's insulting. But the idea of like Hacksaw Ridge, which is a mostly secular movie, but it's a story how one man, through his faith in God and his reliance on God, was able to save a bunch of people. And like the evidence isn't, oh yeah, it didn't turn into this whole apologetics thing about how, actually God can work miracles in the modern day here. You can see here that like this is statistically improbable and clearly God had a hand in this. And like they didn't bring out C.S. Lewis and start quoting Mere Christianity to prove God's existence. That's not what they were doing. They were like, this guy against all odds saved like 100 people or whatever the number was. Like there's no reason he should have been doing this. And the film explains his faith and how through his faith he was able to do it. And in that, it's a testimony to what God has done in his life. And that ultimately speaks to people more spiritually, or at least to me, than basically a gospel tract, right? That doesn't do anything. Because if you're not ultimately receptive to it initially, you're not going to do it. Or you're not going to just listen to the gospel tract. Like if you aren't interested, if you're not open to and being receptive, the story is the track by which we can bring the story and make people receptive to it.
I think you have a great point of realizing that it's our testimony that we want to present of Christ in me. What has he done? It's nothing I have done. It's what he's done in my heart. And that's how I have changed to be a new person. Those are the movies that I think are the best, not objectively, just I believe hit the nail more squarely on the head than others. I think something that the Christian community, the church body, however you want to phrase it, can learn is it's not all about apologetics spewing in your face, in the face of others. That has its place. The knowledge of knowing why you believe what you believe and how to defend that has its place, but it's really going to be that relationship between you and another person that's going to be the testimony, showing them who Christ is through the way you act, and also explaining what he has done in your life through your story. And these movies that I've listed have that in them, the journey from death to life, from into to be a new creation. And those stories are going to get me a lot more than any just blatantly Christian movies. And I would say that to get somebody to go and watch a movie called God's Not Dead, or for that matter, God's Not Dead 5,
That's a huge ask. That's, yeah. I'm not even doing that.
If you're like, trust me, watch this one and you'll be convinced that God is real. I don't think that's the way. I don't think an atheist is going to be like, you know what? The fourth one, I was still questioning it, but the fifth one, I believe, man. But not only does this podcast exist to guide us in our way of how we watch movies, but it's also how do we use movies as a bridge to talk to others about Jesus. And I think if you can get somebody to watch Hacksaw Ridge or maybe Sound of Freedom, or there's a new movie coming out called Freud's Last Session. It's about conversation between Sigmund Freud and C.S. Lewis about the debate on God. I'm excited for that because I think it can have a good story, a compelling story of why Freud is talking about these things with C.S. Lewis, who is known as one of the greatest theologians of his time. If you can get somebody to watch those movies for the sake of, hey, it's an innocent movie, but it's also just a good movie by itself, that happens to have the story of the gospel that you can talk about. Like, why did Desmond Doss believe so strongly in his conviction to not hold a weapon? And how did that make him the hero of the story? Maybe there's something to this faith thing that Desmond Doss has. Or Sound of Freedom. Why does the main character feel so strongly about protecting the children, and why does he have that line like God's children are not for sale? Like, what is his thought process behind his conviction in that? And I believe those are the conversations that can lead into a bigger discussion with you and a friend who doesn't believe into something that's more worthwhile than, so what did you think about when that one guy took the stand and basically told you why all the disciples were not faking it? You know, why?
Guys, I swear it wasn't mass hysteria. There's no way it could have been.
There's just a flow to it that's a lot easier. And it almost sounds like tricking people to watch a movie and then be like, Jesus. But I think we can do that with any movie. And these movies that we're talking about are just easier to bring it to lead into that conversation.
I would say, to echo what you guys are saying, it's like stories impact us and stories are what define us. And when a movie is about a story of someone whose life was changed by God or of what someone did with God, it's way more impactful than the movie just telling you like how your life can be changed by God and what you can do with God. We've got all these guys we've already talked about, like Desmond Doss, Bart Millard, Jeremy Camp, all of these movies and how they're written. You see the message through their story instead of all these movies where they're just being written kind of like as a platform for a gospel message. And I think that's kind of why, I think that's just kind of how Christian studios are writing movies right now. And that's kind of got to change if we're going to go anywhere. Because just like how we don't want all this woke stuff shoved down our throats, I think we should have Christian movies where a non-Christian can go to it without feeling like they have a message being shoved down their throat. And I think that's why some of like the best Christian movies aren't made by Christian studios, like Hacksaw Ridge, like you already mentioned, or like Prince of Egypt, or Chronicles of Narnia, Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and Prince Caspian. It's like these movies, it's focused on the characters and just their own journeys instead of trying to get an obvious message across.
Here's my question. Would modern Disney make Chronicles of Narnia anymore?
Not accurate.
Well, Netflix is today.
Wait,
actually?
Yeah, they are making another one.
The director of Barbie is working on 2 Narnia movies right now.
Huh.
But she's a good director, so I don't know if what's going on there exactly. But
oh boy.
I mean, we'll see. We tricked Disney. That's one point to the Christians. We tricked Disney into making a Christian film. Dreams already did it with Prince of Egypt, but we got one up on the. They must not have seen that C.S. Lewis wrote it. I don't know what happened there. But okay, so I do have a question to further this conversation. So we're 3 young men I think our average age is probably like 21.
I forget that you
and
guys are younger than me.
To be honest, our brains haven't fully developed yet. That doesn't happen until like 25 or something. It's getting close, but
I'm getting close to less stupid.
yeah, well, here's the thing. I'm still stupid, and I got plenty of time before I become unstupid. That's what I'm in college for, or something. And I happen to be double majoring as a business major and a biblical studies major, getting that dual degree. And here's my question, all right? Us three stupid men understand that we're making terrible movies that aren't actually getting the point across that we want to make. So my question is, why the flip are we still doing it? I want to know, what do you guys think? I think there are reasons, and I have a few theories of my own, but I want to hear, why the heck do you guys think that we're still making these films if they keep being lambasted? The first God's Not Dead movie, even if you want to say it was fine, which I haven't even seen it because I heard it wasn't good, so I didn't watch it. And so if Christians are saying that God's Not Dead wasn't that great, and like all this stuff, why do we continue doing this? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. So are they just waiting for one of these movies to end up being good, or what's going on?
Fun fact, God's Not Dead is a 12% on Rotten Tomatoes from the critics and 75% audience score.
That makes sense.
That's all the Christian moms going, it's Christian!
It's Christian! It's Christian!
It's Christian!
That's not a Mario movie difference, That's the low critics and high audience. That's not the same thing. But yeah, I want to make sure I don't cut off Zach, but I'm going to cut off Zach with my opinion first. I don't know exactly why we keep pumping out, and by we, I mean Christian, the Big C Church. I think the 2010s was the time where Christians realized they could make movies, when they realized that it was time to actually change something and start putting effort into it, but they didn't know how. I think in the last decade, from 2015-16 to now, there has actually been a lot more interest in young people wanting to make good Christian movies, myself included. Now, I'm not a filmmaker. I do have a degree in animation.
True, he does have that.
I do have that. I wish I was using it. There has been a resurgence in young people, young creatives wanting to make that type of stuff. It's just not widespread yet. I believe it's going to take another 5-10 years for these young people who have had those ideas to actually make a splash in the directorial debut with a massive movie that they somehow get greenlit by some studio that's willing to mass produce it and give them a huge budget. I think it's easier to make good stuff for more cheap production with the era that we're now in the last 3, 4, 5 years. I think that's going to help. But again, it takes time to write and produce and make these movies that are actually good. And we have yet to, I actually think we've started to see some of them, especially through Angel Studios. Not saying everything in Angel Studios is of value and absolutely wholesome and everything like that. Sound of Freedom was a dark and unnerving movie, but it was really good. And I think that their crowdfunding with Chosen, Sound of Freedom, After Death, that was more of a documentary of people who have died and come back, medically died and come back, and what they saw about the afterlife, which I have not seen, but I'm curious about it. The other one that I'm actually seeing tomorrow is called The Shift, about a retelling of the story of Job with Neil McDonough,
Neil McDowell, I think is how it's pronounced.
Okay, sure. As the main villain, and then like 3 chosen actors. I think it's going to be really good. That's going to be one where that kind of takes a turn from what we've been talking about the historical stories and the testimony of someone to being a fictional story. The production value looks so high. I've seen the trailer multiple times. We should have waited to record this till after I saw that. Because
you put pressure on this. I was okay with putting it off even further, and you were like, no, we need to get it done.
I didn't mean it like that. I just mean I should. Okay,
you.
How about I phrase it like this, Deacon? I should have watched the movie before we recorded this.
Yeah,
then it's on me. My bad. Yeah, the things like that. I think Angel Studios is making huge moves for that, but I believe that we are starting to see an uprise in these types of movies that normal people, that non-believers will watch and then realize that, oh, this faith stuff is important to some people. At the very least, it's a stone in their shoe. That's what Greg Kokel from Stand to Reason says a lot. Put a stone in their shoe so they start thinking about it.
Here's the issue. It may sound controversial, but Christians are being too forgiving with the Christian film industry. I mean, for the past however many years now, for the past, let's say, you slap Christian on something, then you got all the Christian moms and all the Christian families and churches just being like, oh, that makes it automatically good. That's why we've gotten to a fifth God's Not Dead movie, because we're so quick to assume just because it's Christian that it's good. It seems like with every Christian movie now, I mean, I would say they have been getting better, but they're always like, oh, this is the different one, but then it's kind of just more of the same. Yeah, just, we need to hold these movies to a higher standard than we are, and I would say we have seen that a lot with Angel Studios. I mean, even though Angel Studios isn't an entirely Christian studio, are they?
I believe they're based out of BYU, which is Mormon, and has groundings in evangelical Christians, but really not the same. But the values are the same, hence decent movies.
Yeah, but as I was saying, like, I think Angel Studios has been kind of, as a Christian-ish studio, they have been doing a lot better and have been making higher quality film. Like, we've seen The Chosen. The Chosen's been really great. The Shift does look really good because it's, it looks very focused on the character instead of the message. So I'd be interested to see that. I don't have a plan to yet, but I might make one. And yeah, it's just, we need to start holding these films to a higher standard than we are.
Yeah. One thing that I find interesting about Angel Studios. So, fun fact about me, I'm really into board games. I really, really like board games. And they are going through right now a golden age, if you didn't know. And what caused this golden age of board games is actually the internet. And so what the internet has allowed board games to do is, before you had games like Monopoly and Chutes and Ladders and these like wide range, simple, friendly games. Now were exceptions with like Avalon Hill and other game companies doing these really advanced war games, but it was like really niche. And board games as a whole were really niche. But what the internet has allowed is websites like Kickstarter and whatnot, Patreon, have allowed game designers to find their niche audience, to put out good products. That's so many board games have come from this new environment where the internet can connect the buyers to the sellers. And what I see Angel Studios doing, which I think is really smart, is they're allowing the audience to speak even more with their dollar than they normally would. A lot of their shows are either paid forward or they have campaigns to bring their shows to life. And that allows the audience to have some control of, is this something we're interested in? Is this something that is worth giving our money to? It also means that there's less corporate overlords, right? Because if Angel Studios wasn't getting this money from random people, maybe they'd have to go through like Disney or DreamWorks or whatever, which have a bunch of corporate suits who they need to appeal to and like get the green light to go through with their production. By having the audience be the arbiter of what they produce, they can say, all right, audience, here's a movie about this. Is this something you're interested in? And the audience gets to speak with their dollar. And that, I think, is allowing them to bring higher quality shows that people actually want to see, because the people approving these shows aren't the people in charge of these big media production companies. They're the people who actually are going to go end up seeing them. That's, I think, allowed for a higher quality productions.
And I think it's circular, where people who are paying it forward for the movie to be produced and produced well realize that they're putting more money into something that, you're not going to put actual money into the production of Oppenheimer or something like that. But we, the church, understand that it's not easy to get good value out of a movie when it's based in the faith like that. And so I think it's almost a pity thing, where it's like, oh, it's tough for you to get money. Here's some of mine. But it's working. It's all of those moms who are saying it's Christian are now saying, oh, there's a way for me to make more, which they might not see it as better. They might just see it as equal to,
yeah.
But they're giving money to make more of the Christian media that is the way that our society is going. Like, that's something that I'm proud of to have this knowledge and this interest is to know that it's going to be a growing industry. Like it's not stopping anytime soon, and maybe that's to the detriment of society, but it's definitely something that Christians need to hop onto and getting in on this movie thing, this media thing.
Yeah, I think that's something that Christians have struggled a lot with historically is being in the world but not of it. You know, where rock music's the devil and role-playing games are the devil and movies are the devil and like all this stuff. Anime's the devil. It's amazing to me that it takes so long for Christians to keep up with the culture. Like, we're constantly out of date. And it's it took Christians, like you said, till the 2010s or whatever to realize they could make movies. Well, we've been making movies since the 1930s. Like, why did it take this long for us to figure this out? I think that something in the Christian culture, and I think the internet is also helping with that, getting people connected, allowing for the spread of ideas. And I think this next generation, is generally more open-minded, which I will say is sometimes to its detriment with things in the faith. But it does, I think, mean that Christians are doing a better job at keeping up with the culture and being able to... I don't want to pretend like our only job as Christians is to stay relevant. That's not our job as Christians. However, in the realm of secularists are making entertainment and Christians don't have good Christian options to supplement their entertainment, they don't have much choice except the secular. And for Christians, it, especially when, Jesus talks about how out of the treasure of one's heart one speaks, right? What you put in there is what's going to come out. It's important that Christians are supplying that entertainment and that nourishment to other Christians so we can continue to grow and we're not being influenced as much by the outside world. But to do that, Christians actually have to start making the entertainment and keeping up with culture.
I have one thing written down. I don't know if it's a quote or if it's just something that I thought of. Along the lines, too many Christians take in the world but not of the world way too far. And I've talked about the Christian hamster ball before. But at least what I wrote down here, too many Christians want to live in the Garden of Eden, ignoring the whole reason that Christ came to earth, and that's our sin. That's not to say we should accept sin, because sin is sin, and that's not what we want to, not be sinless, but sin less. I know that's super original, but I think those movies that are pure flicks movies, pretty much, I'll call them pure flicks. They're not all pure flicks, and pure flicks probably would be pretty offended if I just group them all in together. But those movies are very hamster ball Christian type of movies where it is your bubble, everything is in there, you are the protagonist is a good Christian, everyone else is the devil and sinful, and just don't go out of that bubble. Or even misrepresenting sin and somebody's actions and why they would do something like that, even that falls under the same guidelines of how do you write the story to be the most accurate. Like, does somebody have reason for doing what they're doing and all that stuff. But we want to portray an accurate world, if it's our world of sin, and not make it super crazy nonsense. But that's not our job. That's just filmmakers' job. But we also want to understand that we shouldn't and can't live in a Christian bubble. We need to be in the world, but not of the world, in the sense that we need to act differently. And yes, be discerning of what we consume, but that shouldn't be absolutely nothing that doesn't come from a church studio or production or anything like that.
I'm so glad you learned some stuff from my Is Horror Biblical episode.
Yep. That was actually, again, by the way, we got our Spotify Wrapped review report from Spotify, and it said that was our most listened to episode. I knew that beforehand, but if you have not listened to it, keep making that number grow. It is the most popular, and I give most of the credit to Deacon because he came up with the idea and he was the one who talked for 80% of that. But it's some good stuff, some interesting things to think about. And then we had a my mom sent me a video of 4 guys, I believe they're pastors or professors, talking about the same thing, but it was way after we had talked about it. So I choose to believe, in my own subjective perspective, that they saw our podcast and decided, hey, let's talk about that same thing, because they had a good idea. That's what I choose to believe, and there's nothing else.
They probably stole some of my points, too. I'm just guessing that they were like, this bright young theologian here. He's got some good things to say.
I thought you were a stupid young man.
No, I'm wise beyond my years.
that
It depends on how much praise you're giving me in the moment.
makes sense. The two
My
are.
ego
It's like
can
a
inflate
graph.
quickly.
Yeah.
Guys, I
I'll
have a
come up with
confession to
your
make.
next banger episode, Seth.
I said I have a confession to make. I don't
Yeah?
think I've actually listened to the Is Horror Biblical episode.
You're not a real
I need to
fan.
listen to that.
You probably think that
Dang it.
horror's just for masochists,
No.
sadists.
Do you think that?
I mean,
horror
I
should
love
be
the A
available?
Quiet Place movies, so
Oh, that's right. You and I did
Yeah,
do the
that's
Quiet
a
Place movies.
thriller.
yeah. I think kind of how these stories are structured is kind of what hurts a lot of them too. I mean, and just that's in the fact that the Christian always wins at the end of the story. You know, like at the end of both of the God's Not Dead movies I've bothered to see, it ends with the main Christian character winning the argument and everything and just ending up on top. And that's not true for the Christian life. You know, we're not usually going to end up on top like that. So I think it kind of paints Christianity as too happy and all flowers and sunshine all the time too. I would say it's kind of like the music industry in the same way, how like the kind of a bunch of Christian music is just kind of like the flowers and the worship and the la-di-da-di-da type of stuff. But then you've got, you know, artists like NF who doesn't sing for or rap for a Christian label anymore, but he's real with his story and everything, and I think that's more impactful than a lot of Christian artists are doing.
Yeah, I agree. And part of what I think that is, I don't know if I actually famously do, but I despise contemporary Christian music with a burning passion. I hate it. I can't stand listening to KTIS. Part of that is my musical preference, which is weird because I'll listen to just about anything and I love all sorts of genres, but that's one that I cannot stand. And I think part of what I dislike about the idea of God's Not Dead, again, I haven't actually seen God's Not Dead, is I think Christian media as a whole, in general, suffers from the same thing contemporary Christian music does, which is, I think, a lack of creativity. I think it really hurts. What attracts us to media, to paintings, to stories, to music is the creativity. It's called the arts for a reason, right? Is crafting this picture, this image, it's conveying a message. And when your message is just like this exposition dump of the four gospels, that's not creative, that's not inspired, that's not something worth telling, and it's not something worth watching. And that's, barring all the other creative processes of shooting a movie and all that technical aspect that makes it an art and all that. But the story itself, right? One of my favorite Christian allegorical stories of the last decade has been, I don't know what it'd be called. It's not a trilogy because it's 4 books, but this series called The Wingfeather Saga. And Angel Studios actually made that into an animated series. They're working on a season 2 right now. But it's very much akin, I think, to Lord of the Rings or Chronicles of Narnia in the sense of it was made by a Christian author. None of it's explicitly Christian, but if you read between the lines, you can see the themes, the biblical themes running through. And I think it's a very well told story. The story elements, everything is so well put together. I love the books. But we need more of that. We need more creativity. We need more inspiration. We need to see something that's not, oh, here's the Bible reskinned, or here's the Bible literally. I'm not dissing The Chosen. The Chosen was well done for what it is. But not every piece of Christian media should be The Chosen. We need more Christian creatives who are willing to take risks and are willing to explore different aspects of the faith through creative storytelling that's worth engaging in.
100%. I have a quote written down. And again, my notes are mostly like the last couple months of me coming across something and being like, oh, that'd be good to add to that episode. But it's from a guy named Mike Duran. And I don't know if you guys have heard of him, but I visited his website just now to see where did I hear this quote or something. Right at the top of his website, like a month ago, he posted his latest book release called Christian Horror, 2nd edition, now live.
Yeah, I was about to say, I don't know if you remember this, but I had a few quotes from Mike Duran's book in the Horrors Biblical episode. Okay. I hope I credited him because I definitely did take some quotes from him.
Okay. So you must have had the 1st edition. The 2nd edition is now live, which is apparently twice as long. But the quote I have in relation to how Christian art is made, he says, Christian art has become defined by what the art does not have rather than what the art does have. And maybe that's something Deacon said, and I was like, oh, that'd be good.
I am not joking when I think I used that exact quote in our episode, because I was talking about, right, in relation to horror, where Christian media isn't anymore what it has to offer. It's just, horror can't be Christian because of blood or violence or whatever. And so now Christian media it doesn't swear and there's not blood, therefore Christian.
Yeah. No, you're right. I thought I was coming to the table with something brand new. And Deacon's like, nah, I talked about that like 6 months ago, man. But yeah, that's a good quote. It's just how Christian art is made, regardless of if it's movies or not. Like, he's talking about stories because that's really his focus, and that's our focus here. But like, how are we portraying in music or visual arts, paintings and graphic design and stuff like that? Like, how are we honoring God through that? And that's as a creative, speaking to other creatives, but not everyone out there is a creative, but still everything we do should glorify God.
I mean, this might kind of be a side thing, but as we've already been talking about, Christian movies need to be more than for a Christian audience. And I think titles are a big part of that.
Okay.
A title like God's Not Dead 5, or even a title like Jesus Revolution isn't going to bring in your general audience. And I think going back to The Shift, I think The Shift is a movie that's going to bring in more than your Christian audience. It just kind of looks like a sci-fi thriller, which is very interesting to me. Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of, I think movies should kind of escape the Christian bubble in that way and kind of be something for all, and just even be enjoyable to non-Christians and target, people who have no religious beliefs or they don't go to church or anything.
I think it can be used really well. Devil's advocate
Moment.
Devil's avocados.
If I 100% agree with you that names God's Not Dead, Jesus Revolution, or whatever could push non-Christian audiences away. To counter or to further impress that and take that to its logical conclusion, to me, are people going to go watch a movie called The Shift that's made by Angel Studios? Is the name Angel Studios actually hurt it? Are we wearing our heart on our sleeve a little bit here? Are we showing our hand a little too much? Are we alienating an audience based off of what we clearly are espousing as our beliefs?
I see what you're saying. I think Angel Studios is better than PureFlix.
Oh, 100%. I don't know what marketing team was behind PureFlix.
What do you guys think we should name our new studio? It's got good pure movies, and it's movies. PureFlix. It's like Netflix, but it's pure.
Guys, too many people have been Netflix and chilling. We need to bring back purity. Chastity, guys. PureFlix.
PureFlix and Room for Jesus.
Yeah, amen. I can't fit a Bible in between you two.
Shirt idea?
Oh, no.
PureFlix and Room for Jesus? That would be funny. Oh, man. Good stuff.
Funny.
No, you're right. I think Angel Studios is in a position where they didn't expect to get this big, but they're in it now. What are they going to do? Change their very recognizable name in the Christian community to something different? I don't think that's an option, but I do see what you're saying. And I also don't think that a lot of people actually care as much as we do about things like studios. So maybe we're just concerned about nothing. Like, I don't know that. I think we overinflate how people think about movies before seeing them. I think a lot of people are just like, there's a movie's in theater. Let's go see it. Yeah.
No, and I can agree with that. And I'm not 100% sure where Angel Studios is at. Obviously, they want to make money and they want to build a market and all that. I'm also not sure where they're at. I don't know if they're trying to reach secular audiences. I don't know what their goal is. I might be content with just reaching a big Christian market. I don't know what their objective is.
Well, The Chosen was actually like a top streamed show last year, wasn't it?
I mean, yeah, but evangelicals are also a big population in the U.S., so it's also like the Christian market may be just the Christian market and not the secular market, but that's still almost 50% of the population that identifies as Christian. Whether or not they're real Christians, I'd question, but
Yeah. No, first off, The Chosen is international, multiple languages it's been translated to and dubbed over, as well as a lot of Catholics love it. And that's not a conversation I want to get into about Deacon's comment about real Christians, but
No, Catholics are not my gripe when it comes to real Christians. I will say that my gripe about real Christians are those who confess with their mouth, but their actions don't reflect that.
because they live in America, they're Christians.
Yeah, Catholics themselves, I actually have a lot of respect for in general. And I think obviously any sect of Christianity, there's good ones who I think understand and there's bad ones that don't.
Like I said, we're not getting into that, but thank you for explaining yourself.
Should we mention Passion of the Christ at all?
Sure.
I have nothing to say about it, but does someone have something to say about it? I've never actually seen it.
Should we talk about this? I don't have anything to add to the conversation.
I mean, it's one of the most like
It could be
iconic
cool.
Christian films. I mean, I have nothing to say because I haven't seen it.
No, you're right. We did do an episode on it. Isaac and I talked about that with for our Easter episode this year. It went kind of in depth about why it's I believe the title of the episode is The Only Good Christian R Movie and the morality behind that. But yeah.
Some morality behind clickbait.
You got me.
You know where liars go. Revelation 21:22. They go straight downstairs to the warm place.
Oh boy.
Sulfur.
Well, we're all destined for there, but thank God for his grace and for his forgiveness.
Cue the credits. And that's how you make a Christian film right there.
There you go.
That's how you end a Christian film.
Thank God for his grace and forgiveness title card. Yeah, I would say if you want our discussion on the Passion of the Christ, go listen to that episode. That we don't have time for that today, folks. Just kidding. No, honestly, we made some good points there, and I think that there's merit in talking about that as well, and how that was Mel Gibson really felt the need for a movie like that to be made, and his passion behind that. Pun unintended. I think.
So, what have we learned? What have we learned here?
So what we have learned applies to our life today, and God has a lot to say.
I was just thinking that. What do we think about VeggieTales?
Oh, we haven't said any VeggieTales. I mean, I'd rather watch a VeggieTales than God's Not Dead any day. So
Yes, VeggieTales is made for a Christian audience. Let's not pretend like that's Angel Studios disguising a movie as neutral movie.
No, however, I will say VeggieTales has somehow managed to make its way into meme culture.
Yes.
Which is hilarious to me, but I love seeing a VeggieTales meme every once in a while.
I think that came from our parents' generation seeing the value in a kids' Christian show, and that one just being the most popular, and then our generation, even if they don't believe in God anymore, still having that be a core memory in their childhood. So,
but it's also just like genuinely funny.
I mean,
Phil Vischer was good at writing, and like it's genuinely funny.
I'm from the IRS.
That's part of what made it. I mean, going back to my point about creativity, that's part of the reason why it was so popular, is because parents could stand to watch it with their children because it was funny and well written. Like, parents would buy it or watch it because it was actually good.
I wanted to play Mousetrap. You roll your dice, you move your mice, nobody gets hurt.
No one gets hurt.
All right, the conclusion for the episode is watch The Passion of the Christ. Watch VeggieTales. Watch God's Not Dead. He might be dead. The movie's kind of ambiguous on whether or not he is or not.
It's not what we said.
Jury's still out on that one. 50%. Wait, hang on.
Wait, do you remember the end of God's Not Dead where everyone just stands up and says, God's not dead, one at a time? That was, oh man.
My favorite part in God's Not Dead is when God's Not Dead says, it's God's Not Dead time. And then God's Not Dead, so overall.
Classic, who could forget that?
50% of critics say that God is dead. 50% say that he's not dead. 75% of viewers say that God isn't dead. 25% of viewers say God is dead.
There we go.
So I'm glad we're on that. And while we're on the subject, after you looked up the Rotten Tomatoes score for the first one, I had to look at the Rotten Tomatoes score for the next four. They just get worse. The viewers started to fall off too. Like, it goes from viewers at like a 75 to like a 59 to like a 50. It's not good. It's not good.
Seth, do you remember that God's Not Dead 2 had an after credit scene?
No. What was that about?
With the pastor getting arrested. Do you remember that?
No, it's been so long.
But it's just so dumb. It's like Pureflix thinks they can try and be the next like Marvel or something.
I mean, the God's Not Dead extended universe.
Yes, the Pureflix cinematic universe.
GNDEU rolls off the tongue really well.
Next in the extended universe is Paul's not dead. Like, I don't know.
But he kind of is. If we have a reincarnated Paul, we have a big problem.
Yeah.
But what if he isn't? Like,
but what if?
I just don't know where you expand the universe to after God's Not Dead 5. Like, the devil is alive and well. Part
Oh,
6.
man.
I mean, like, we're almost getting to, like, Fast and Furious levels
Oh.
of universe.
Yeah, I've seen the meme. There's a meme that says like God's Not Dead's basically the Christian version of Fast and the Furious because they just.
I mean,
Everyone
it
wants
is.
to die. Everyone wants it to die.
Everyone
but
wants it
they
to
keep
die,
making
but they
them.
keep paying for tickets. I don't get it. But also, I don't know if God's Not Dead's actually making money or if they have rich backers who keep putting up the money for these.
That's
I
a
don't know.
total possibility. Anyways,
Have you guys seen the Left Behind movies?
okay. Actually,
I
yes.
have not.
That's actually another interesting. I mean, oh boy, maybe we should just have that be its own episode because I also want to rewatch them for that sake of reviewing them. There's also been other
Those
like
were
the not Kirk Cameron versions. The one with Nick Cage. Oh,
Yeah, why is there
boy.
one with Nick Cage?
He's iconic.
How did
He is
that movie
iconic.
happen?
I don't know, man.
Nick Cage needed money, and there was a period in his life where he was literally taking any role offered to him. That's
Yeah,
why.
I did that.
There's that one SNL skit of him like until I have achieved my personal goal of being in every single movie ever released, I will not stop. Yeah,
And you know what? I respect him for it.
I think there's been a couple variations of the Left Behind movies. I think that's its own episode sometime. Well, Deacon pretty much summed it up with what we've learned. Don't watch God's Not Dead.
Yep.
Watch the other ones that we listed.
It's
Maybe not
cringe.
Christmas Grace.
No, not that one either.
Go check out The Shift.
Don't watch anything from Pureflix. They might be of the devil. I'm not sure.
Man, we're making a lot of objective claims here, but to be honest, just be discerning with everything you watch. That's
I'm
the
just
main
saying, Satan disguises himself as an angel of light, and he got a little too carried away with Pureflix.
point. Okay.
Oh my
Deacon with the hot
gosh.
takes. That's why Deacon has not been on the podcast in a while.
You know, when you're when you're designing a girl's toy, and so you make it pink and you put flowers, and like there's the stereotypical little boy who's like, "Oh, what else do girls like? Unicorns." You know, it's like that. But the devil's like, "Okay, so what are Christians gonna buy? Pureflix, over the top."
I'm not saying there's no basis for your conspiracy. Maybe we'll have a conspiracy
So I'm
episode.
here to make enemies.
Your goal in life is to figure out how to make most
Well,
people
see,
against you.
I'm a stupid young man. My brain hasn't fully developed yet, so I might as well make enemies while I still have the chance.
You don't know how to make friends, so you
I'm
just
not
make
wise
enemies.
yet. Yeah, something like that.
I gotta stop. All right, good stuff. Thank you guys. Are you gonna talk? I feel like every time I try and wrap up, you have a quick oneer.
Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. That's what I say.
Okay,
Why?
sounds good.
A true
Thank you,
Christian
guys.
letter.
That's
Straight
in
from
the
the
book of
Bible.
Proverbs. Chapter 32 of Proverbs.
Oh man. All right, both of you, shut up.
Okay. Why is Seth muted?
Why did Seth mute?
You can't do that to me. I thought I had admin privileges.
Who muted Seth?
Don't mute me again. Deacon, you're touching your mouse. Of course you are.
Well, yeah, because Zach muted me.
No, I
I
muted
didn't
you
mute
because you
anyone.
kept interrupting my outro.
Well, I don't want you to outro. I just want to keep doing this. The infinite outro. I'm trying it out here.
I think this is the longest intro we've had. Or outro.
Gonna hold you guys in purgatory here. Oh, purgatory's biblical. Pureflix won't tell you about purgatory.
You are going to try
Angel
and make
Studios,
as many
though.
enemies.
Angel Studios will tell you about Purgatory. In their next Angel anime,
Oh,
Purgatory's
no.
the main setting for it. I don't even remember what the show's called, but it looked interesting.
Oh, I mean, yeah, they
serious?
actually have that anime coming out.
Listen, I'm just doing what Paul or what John did in the first 7 chapters of Revelation. I'm just calling out all the churches.
I don't think that's
Wow.
what it is.
So,
I'm just gonna say
Seth,
that.
have you figured out how to mute me yet, or do I
No.
just keep talking?
No, I can't just. I want you to
I
kindly
can-
be
I can
quiet.
keep talking. I'll keep talking. Okay.
I'm trying to find.
So,
I'm-
what do we think the Antichrist is? Because Elon Musk, interesting call, but he gave us back our freedom of speech on Twitter. So
We're just gonna keep going.
or it's X. Well, you know, I feel like Walt Disney could be the Antichrist. I feel like there's a case that could be made for that.
I'm not
But
even
like,
gonna
I don't
try
know if Walt
anymore.
Disney actually should be at fault because like
I've lost
he's
all
dead.
control.
But like Disney as a whole, you know, like as a corporate company, could be. I think the case could be made that it is the Antichrist.
There's no option to.
I don't know if the
not have you
Antichrist
guys be-
is like a conglomerate. So
Maybe Bob Iger is the anti.
no, it's Kathleen Kennedy. If it's anyone, it's Kathleen Kennedy. She's an interesting woman. She's the reason that women didn't have rights until the mid 19th century.
Bro.
Like
I'm about to just kick you from the call so I can do the outro.
my business professor was talking about how history is like a pendulum and like we swing from one extreme to the other throughout all of history. And I think with feminism we overcorrected significantly. We gave them too many rights.
I'm about to kick you from the entire call. I love you.
See, I'm
Stop.
I'm just putting off the fact that I have to go do homework after this, and like
We
I
can-
don't
We
really
can
want
stall
to
for
go do
time.
homework.
We can stall for time after we're done recording.
I mean, we
It's gonna be
could,
so
but then
fun for Seth to edit.
is he gonna?
I don't know. At this point, we're just gonna talk for the next 24 hours.
Seth, if I hold this hostage for another 41 minutes, you got your first 2 hour
Yeah.
2 hour episode.
I honestly am surprised there's not an option to not let you mute and unmute. I thought
Riverside believes in my freedom of speech. I will not be silenced. I watched God's Not Dead, We the People. Did you know that's what God's
Oh,
Not
yeah.
Dead 4 is called? Is God's
Yeah.
Not Dead, We the People?
It was talking about how terrible it is to be a Christian in America.
The
persecution
of Christians in America.
Woe is us.
I feel so persecuted right now in my Christian college studying the Bible freely. My ability to post my opinions on the Bible publicly on the internet and not be arrested.
I don't know. After your hot takes, you never know.
I got cut in line at Walmart once. I think that's persecution.
The devil is
Chick-fil-A
real.
was closed on a Sunday one time. And I took that as a direct assault on my religious liberties. You know, the Sabbath is supposed to be a day of rest, so I went to Chick-fil-A so I didn't have to make food myself, but they were closed. And so I had to go home and make food myself, which was a violation of my religious liberty to not work on the Sabbath. So Chick-fil-A, if you're listening to this, open on Sunday. Chick-fil-A corporate.
What's I'm now curious. What's the fifth God's Not Dead called?
I don't think it's actually out yet.
It's not out yet.
I realize
not
that.
based off what I saw.
It was about to go into production before the writers and actors strike started. so.
Okay.
Wait, Christians can strike?
Yeah, well, I think some of the actors are part of the guild and everything. So
Gotcha.
Yeah, so God's Not Dead 2, God's Not Dead A Light in the Darkness, and God's Not Dead We the People. However, the third
Rise
film
Up.
is
It's
Right,
called
yeah,
Rise
Rise
Up.
no way. It's gonna be like Christians coming and taking over the country or something to be like
Right after We the People, I think they're trying to say something. I don't know why they're publishing our plans on the or like, on the TV though. Like usually you're supposed to keep those under wraps so they don't know what's coming.
the surprise attack isn't very surprised if you let them know what you're gonna do.
No, the only person who's ever successfully able to do that was Jesus when he said, "I'm coming at a time that you don't know and you won't expect." Like that's the only surprise attack that will ever happen once you announce it.
Fair.
He could come right now, but he won't come right now because I think he might come right now, and then I would have expected it. See,
wants to
there's a
prove
little
you
bit of a little bit of a paradox going on here, where if we constantly expect it to happen, it just will never happen.
I think that's how that works, but I wish.
Maybe that's why the rapture hasn't happened yet. You know, it's been 2,000 years or so, and
Do you guys actually want to say goodbye, or are you just gonna talk for another?
yes, let's outro. Let's outro.
I don't
we the
trust
people
you
rise up.
anymore.
Seth Mossberg of the One Eyed Film Podcast. How can I earn your trust back?
By muting yourself and not unmuting until I'm done.
Done with what?
Like saying buy merch, follow the social
But
media, and all that.
but I can't say goodbye if I'm muted.
Okay, then have self-control and don't speak into your microphone for about 30 seconds.
Fine, but don't say anything that will cause me to interject then.
I'm
Did you know,
fine.
Seth, that if you cause me to stumble, you might as well have a millstone tied around your neck and you might as well be casted into the sea. If you cause me to stumble, you're just trying to tempt me right now is what you're really doing.
I didn't even say anything, and then you go off on that. That's what I'm talking about.
You're threatening me, Seth. I will give you some grace. I will forgive you for your transgressions, and you can now go through with the outro.
Okay, I'm gonna figure out how much of this to include because
It'll be
Just make
funny.
a full like bonus episode.
a bonus episode of Deacon's ramblings. We'll have a counter at the end of were you offended by this bonus episode? Most likely, yes. Thank you guys so much for listening or watching. Buy some merch. Follow the socials. I'm watching Deacon to make sure he doesn't talk. And share this with your friends. You guys come back next week for another cool episode because it's always cool around here. Have a great rest of your day.
See ya.
You're loved. God bless.
Goodbye, and don't forget to greet each other with a holy kiss
100%.
every time.
Paul said it himself.
Straight out of scripture.
Biblical.